Franky, Jake, what's up?
Hey, what's happening, Mark?
Dude, we're getting ready to talk about one of my favorite things. One of the things I think that every illustrator should keep an eye on. Are both of you, do you come from the world of graphic design and illustration before you ended up in animation and working on video? Like, is that where you came from, or did you start where you're at right now?
Yeah, I got my associates in graphic design and then finished my bachelor's in it, but then just moved in motion and animation and now a lot of 3D stuff. What
apps are you using for people that are watching today?
You know, basics, Adobe After Effects, Cinema 4D, getting a little into Unreal, doing some of that more interactive stuff. But yeah, that's usually my day to day.
And Snapchat stickers. I know you do a lot of Snapchat stickers, right? That's a big part of your process.
Yeah. I'm stickers all day long, dude. That's usually it.
Yeah. Okay.
But then I'm hopping through
sure
Illustrator and Photoshop, and
I would just like to create a baseline because so many of us speak the language of the Adobe Creative Suite for a minimal monthly payment. And I like the idea that if you're in one of those, you might not be so spun out. Like when I got into Premiere Pro, it felt like I opened up Final Cut and I said, I don't know about this. I went over to Premiere Pro and it felt very adjacent to Photoshop and Illustrator, where I'm the most knowledgeable. What about you, Jake? Did you start out in photography or did you work there from someplace else?
I've always been behind the camera.
Okay.
I definitely took a lot of graphic design classes, getting my studio arts degree, and have just always loved and appreciated design. I played around a little bit and have some experience, but I'm 100% camera, video editing.
Well, both of you guys are in the right spot at the exact right time, because as we're seeing, the visual language of design will never go away. Since the beginning of man, blood, fingers, and cave walls, we've had illustration and typography to tell our story. That's going to continue for the rest of the human race. However, we find ourselves at a very interesting moment where everything's motion now. It used to be enough for an illustrator to post their latest and greatest creation and walk away. And we're just simply not there anymore if you want engagement. You have to be able to make a video about how you made the logo or talk up about it, or as we've seen some people do, even create skits about the creative process.
Right.
And then on the other hand, when you're working with clients or trying to get people's attention, the ability that you have, Franky, to take a stagnant logo and say, what if those stars spin around? What if the eagle flies and lands inside of the logo? Like, we're just at a moment where people's expectations are, they need constant stimulation. And that's where both of you, I think, are in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. I think that's just on the trajectory of, content.
Yeah.
There's just so much now you have to compete with, and you have to capture people's attention. And I think the easiest way to do that is, when something's moving. It's kind of mesmerizing.
Well, it's just like, with editing videos, I started to realize that if I talk to the end of all my clips, leave a little bit of space at the end, right, of a shot, then I would have a little lip where the next clip could start under what I'm already showing you. And just little gimmicks like that, where it's like, I'm telling you, we're looking at a half pipe. I'm like, this half pipe's great, but check out these new decks. But you don't see the deck yet. You're like, oh, where's the deck? Like, it's just little tricks like that to keep people's attention a second longer. And that's really what we're in the game of now, is like audience retention, because people are bombarded with just so much content. Let's start here. Jake, with you. When you're looking at people that are in the design world that maybe aren't professional video editors, someone like myself, my path was Macromedia Freehand, Adobe Photoshop, into Adobe Illustrator, and now I live and breathe in Premiere. Premiere is my happy space. I absolutely love it. I've made the jump over, but like, as somebody who does video editing as a pro, where do you think a lot of designers could start to put just a little bit of that production value into what they're already doing to like up the ante on their social media, up the ante on people paying more attention to them, getting more conversation going, more engagement? Like, where would you think a good spot to start would be for folks?
Man, I think it's just as simple sometimes as choosing to hit screen record as you're working through your process.
Pro tip. Yes.
And if you want to take it to the second step, it would be putting a camera whether it's your phone, whatever camera
Right.
you have, and film over your shoulder of you actually working through the process and showing it what it takes to get there, instead of only seeing final artwork.
That is so important, to remember to document the process. And you're right. Screen record is such an easy thing to do. I do a series of podcasts with my friends over at DKNG Studios, and they've been doing screen records of their like just gnarly, Dan's Rain Man when it comes to doing illustrations inside of Illustrator. They've now taken the idea of, well, what if you take that screen record and you do a little play-by-play over it, right? You just, like, now you've added another thing where it's like, yeah, it's cool to see a guy work on a logo for 30 hours and show it to me in 30 seconds, but maybe let's make a 3-minute or 30-minute version of that where you're now doing voiceover and kind of explain to me how you trap that texture in there, how you take from sketch to vector, how you, give it the lighting source all at the end. Like, there's just so many ways to do it, but you're right. Screen record, Shift Apple 5. That's QuickTime, baby. That's for free. That's already on your rig if you're an Apple user.
And if you're using Procreate, it's built into the software right there, and it does it for you, makes it nice and easy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So then if people want to set up a secondary camera, you've now brought up the one of the golden rules is like more perspectives, more attention. And people look at somebody like Casey Neistat over on YouTube that just went on that unmatched run of the daily vlog, and people would always see him with the big boy Canon, right? He was a Canon guy, right? Yeah. He would always have the big boy Canon out on the electric skateboard or the one wheel, whatever pogo ball, whatever device he was on that day, skateboard. And so people thought, oh, he's running like this big mega Canon on the Gorilla Grip with the big lens on it, but he would use his phone, GoPro, like basically any camera that captures the story is the perfect camera at the time if you pull it out of your pocket and do it. So once again, you said you could just have your screen record going, take your iPhone, film you. It's like this bar of entry of like, well, if I want to get into this, I got to buy a $2,500 body and a $1,800 lens. Like, it's just not that way anymore.
I've been told the best camera is the camera that you have on you.
Yep.
And the cameras weren't like that for a really long time. And gear and equipment and everything that can kind of spook you out of choosing to document your process or film whatever it is that you want to film, it's in your pocket every day. And you might have another old one in your drawer in your bedroom, and then you have 2 cameras and a screen recording. You could do voice memos from your phone. It's really about just taking that step and choosing to do that.
And the more cameras, like, you're definitely not trying to add more work. I think you're trying to add more storytelling.
Exactly.
Right? And that's where it gets into what Franky does with taking, stagnant logos, stagnant illustrations, and just putting that story into it, and almost like I've seen some of the work that you've done before where when you animate the logo, it almost gives all the little pieces in the lockup like meaning, like there's a reason why those stars form that crest on the bottom horizontal line, or there's a reason why, that animal fits into that little lockup. Like, I love when you do that, where you simply take the logo and create a story on how all those pieces come together to actually make the branding.
Yeah. And whether that's conscious or subconscious, because I've been doing it a while, sometimes I just kind of let it rip.
Right.
And the other times it's, we plan it out accordingly. But yeah, animation, the root word is you're giving life to something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's essentially what my job is just giving life to whatever's handed to me.
You said something interesting that, like, sometimes it's like premeditated and sometimes it just happens. You guys will know this because you especially with you, Jake, like, you have software that you work with, but you also work with hardware, cameras. My goal with any piece of equipment in my career is I want to be able to play it like guitar, right? And what I mean by that is when you see a guy or a gal who's good at playing guitar, they just shred. They smoke cigarettes, they close their eyes, they talk to God. Like, they do not need to be like, am I on the right fretboard? Okay, now let me move my fingers over here.
They've had a couple beers.
They've had a couple of beers. They're flirting with somebody in the front row. Like, they just play it like it's an extension of them. And when you talk about like animating, when you get really good at your craft, you play it like guitar.
Yeah,
like you
totally.
don't have I could just give you any logo and you're like, I already know the play.
Yeah.
I don't need a briefing. I know the backstory and how all this comes together.
Yeah. And yeah, through animation, all the work I did before that, and I don't know, even just art classes, it all adds up to,
For sure.
you know.
But you just now have that extra trick where you can take things and make it move and make it come to life, which I believe like a benefit to hanging out with somebody like you at our Into the Woods conference. It's coming up at the end of July, 1st of August, is that if you're already somebody who's doing illustration and branding, if you can just learn a minimal amount of animation, you now have an upsell to your clients, right?
Yeah, just little tweaks or tricks can go a long way.
Long way, because it literally can be, hey, I've done this branding for you. I've done this illustration. And I know that you are planning on using it in a very like stagnant, like print way where there's, life is not possible. But for your social, for your website, for an extra amount, I can make this thing come to life. That's a pretty easy upsell. And the best thing is you're not getting handed some garbage that somebody else created. It's your illustration. It's your branding.
Oh, right, yeah.
So like you're not cleaning up somebody else's mess and like, who drew this? Like who put this together? Like you're already, balls deep. Go ahead and go the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's just one more layer if you're trying to improve your brand or yourself or your craft.
Right. Just get it in there a little bit deeper. So for both of you guys, when you work together on projects, how much of that do you pre-plan out? Like when you're doing video work and you're going to do like the swipes and the intros and all that stuff, do you guys storyboard that out ahead of time? Do you just start editing something, Jake, and like kind of lean over and be like, do you have room to make this for me? Like how much of it is actually like whiteboarded out and how much of it just happens on the fly?
I mean, it depends per project. So
Yeah.
we've had projects where, we make storyboards that the client has to okay, or write scripts. Or, sometimes it's just Jake's working on edit and he's like, hey, I need an end card on this. Can you have a, hour or two to knock something out?
Mm-hmm.
And then, it really it depends on what the project is, what the story we're telling is. But recently on a shoot, I knew that we were going to integrate video and 3D together. So there was a lot of kind of like pre-planning and working with Franky to know what to shoot to be most ideal for him to be able to work with.
Going out and doing test shots.
Yeah.
Make sure that we can do this.
Well, it's like when Jake and I started working on all the Into the Woods stuff together, we had the fundamental problem that everybody has now. YouTube is landscape. The rest of social media is portrait. And it just creates an infinite amount of hassles, right? So we kind of had to figure out, how do I capture all these interviews so that we can do everything one time but have two different products? So we had a whole conversation about like, well, I should be on a green screen so that we have maximum real estate around me to put the guest over my shoulder on my TV or to put a stack beside each other. And so, the guest is just going to come in on Zoom. So that's our hard factor, that they're in one environment. But because I'm the constant, we had the ability to kind of figure out, well, what to do with me so that I could fit into both of those shapes, right? And so like conversations like that, before you even hit record, it's kind of the golden rule over on YouTube, like right before record. And I think that a lot of times if you have that moment to do that pre-production of like, can I make the assets that makes your job easier? Yeah. That's when you get perfect workflow.
I mean, so back to this project we're working on. We've been working on the wide, but now I got to render in 3D a whole different one. And I had to change the camera a little bit, because when you go from wide to tall, you see stuff that you didn't see in the wide. And so you kind of have to tweak it and then render out a whole new file.
Yeah. I see a lot of like, I'm going to say younger kids, but I'm talking about, people that are in their 20s or so that have just bought like this insane camera rig, and they're like, Bricky, check it out, I just got it. And they're talking to me in like f-stops and math that I don't even understand, but they always shoot to me and like, yeah, man, it's 4K. I'm like, I don't really know that matters in social media. I mean, I have friends that insist that their YouTube channels be 4K, but then they talk to me about like render time, upload time. I'm like, I don't know, man. I just don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong, guys, but doesn't it seem like we live in a world where it's kind of more important that the content is there faster, versus like waiting forever to do this epic quality thing? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a designer. I love quality and I don't want to cut every corner, but I think if there's a place where you can cut a corner, it's like sometimes just done is better than perfect when it comes into capturing the story.
Yeah. For most projects don't need any more than 1080.
Yeah.
But a lot of the footage is just, is shot in 4K or above. And on my end, like working with that footage even is more taxing on the computer. Mm-hmm. So it takes longer to get it done.
It's too many Ks.
It's too many Ks, man.
Too many Ks.
8Ks? Come on.
Who needs 8Ks? Nobody needs them.
I think it can, my problem with it is it holds people back.
Yes.
It's really exciting at first. Walking into a camera store or wherever you buy your camera equipment is like walking into a candy shop. It's really easy to get excited and get it really interested and fascinated in the technology that's available. But that's what's going to hold you back from getting it. Some people, it will hold them back from actually getting stuff done. They spend all their energy looking at the gear and the resolutions and all that, but then they spend the time struggling, whether it's a pain to get the camera equipment set up and actually use it, process it in the computer. It's more important to, get your ideas executed and a finished product.
You're absolutely right. Like I've always been driven to story. Like story motivates me. So I've never really had like the sickest equipment because I was like, well, a more complicated camera is going to just slow down that creative process. So I started on focusing on story, performance, being in front of the camera, and editing. And now that I feel like I have those three things down, I now know enough about equipment to be like, oh, there is a room for upping my production, but I know exactly the camera that I need. I know what makes that camera perfect for me, like in-body stabilization. I'm a run and gun videographer. I don't use a tripod ever. I'm always on the go. And, I love Sony cameras because they look great in low light, but my God, it always looks like there's an earthquake if your heart's beating. It's like you just move the camera a little bit like this, and what it looks like on frame is like that, So, I didn't know that in-body stabilization for me and my personal style was the most important tool. And so you're absolutely right, Jake. I see people all the time, they go the other way. They go gear first, and what happens? You go out and shoot a bunch of stuff, then you realize like how hard editing is. And then you also learn that nobody cares in the beginning. And you're like, I've spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours for 172 views.
Well, and most people are looking on their phone anyways.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's all content. Everything you make, you got to keep in mind. It's being looked at while somebody's on a toilet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Everybody here consumes content when they're taking their favorite seat of the day. So you got to keep in mind that like that, the baby TV is where people are, seeing a lot of this stuff.
And if you forget your phone, hopefully there's a label somewhere you can read.
Oh, it doesn't work without something to occupy the brain. It just doesn't work. So as Jake said, like screen record, grab your iPhone. Is there any quick entry way that an illustrator or typographer, graphic designer, classic graphic designer could get into putting a little bit of animation in their work other than like going into After Effects and one of these? Because, dude, when we were in meetings yesterday, I looked through the window at your computer. I'm like, does he work for SpaceX or Lincoln? Like, what is happening on that screen over there?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. There's the animation tool in Procreate that's pretty fun. You just start drawing some, go to the next frame. It's really just start messing around, and you kind of, that's the path. That's the start of the path.
Right.
And then just stay interested and keep playing around.
I'm gonna show my age because I used to
Flash.
do Flash. You knew where I was going, because I used to do Flash and all the motion tweens. Yeah. When I got into Premiere and I started getting into keyframing, I'm like, oh, there's a lot you can do in Premiere with keyframing. Also, if you do like a chroma key and use, like green screen for lack of professional terms, you put a green screen in your artwork, you're like, oh, I can definitely put a green hit in the middle of this Lincoln logo, and now I have the ability to bring something out of that logo. And that's just literally like stacking two images on top of each other and just getting creative with the process.
And, to add on to that, some of the things that that have an impact on me today is, one, shooting with a 35 millimeter camera.
Okay.
Learning the absolute basics of shooting a photo, only having the certain amount of images per roll. For photography, video, learning those like base fundamentals too can really push you to when you can use your phone and it just immediately records in good quality. And then on the animation front, taking sticky like Post-it notes, a pack of those, and you draw a frame on each one of those, and then you can flip through it, run through just the basics first.
Yeah. I mean, those are good spots to start, because it just starts to create that muscle memory, right? And then when you look at a project, you start to look for the moments where, like I know how to do just a minimal amount of illustration or animation work in my video production, but I know what I'm capable of, right? And so when I'm out shooting in the field, I know I want to stitch this location to that location. So if I start the shot not looking at myself, spin the camera around, I have that wipe in there. If I do that at the second location and keep that wipe in the same direction, it's just going to go from me here to me over there. If I want to put a little Google Earth in between with a couple of animations that go in and out, next thing you know, it's like I'm standing, in one spot, the camera goes up and over, and I'm in the other spot, and people are like, how did you do that? Well, I pre-planned it out. Like when I was filming the video, I knew in my mind, this is the transition. So I'm like shooting in the field for what I'm going to edit later. So just all those little things of being prepared, like you said, taking the stickies, working on the idea of how traditional animation works, gets you in the mindset of how digital animation works.
Yeah. And also just thinking a lot about whatever you're working on, don't have to write anything down, but just keep in your mind.
Yes. Where do you do your most thinking? I'm a driving the car, walking the dog, and taking a shower guy. That's when all the big thoughts come to me.
Yeah, commute. I got a hot tub, so I wish I had a sauna, because my thinking's a lot better in the sauna, but I'll take the hot tub.
Hot tub thing.
Yeah,
I love that.
You get in this like kind of flow state almost. Sure. Yeah.
Well, it's been proven like when you're in the shower, there's part of your brain that is absorbed with the stimulation of the water hitting you everywhere. Yep. So then it opens up this other part of your brain that is allowed to just like think. Same thing with driving. There's part of your brain that's like, I'm keeping myself alive. And then that other little voice in your head just kind of like, what am I going to do tomorrow at work? I wonder, this is the way that I'll shoot this. If I do it this way, it'll edit faster. Like all the time before I do, because all my work now is pretty much video or audio work that goes into video. I'm always trying to think about, here's the subject matter. Out of my different production skill sets, what's the best plan of attack for the most efficient edit and release, right? And you just I look at people that go into a big, long day, and I'm like, I want to pull them aside and be like, you're over capturing. You're filming every little detail of your day. This is going to be a disaster to edit. And we both know, all of us know, it's way easier to make something long than it is to make something short.
Oh, yeah.
Short content is the hardest content to create.
Yeah.
So when people are like, oh, you make these videos on YouTube, why not do something on TikTok? It's like, you don't understand, because they're like, it's only 15 seconds. It's only 15 seconds where you literally have to plan something different on that screen happening every one of those 15 seconds. Like that editing gets down to frames, not second counts.
And you got to learn to dance.
I know, and that's just not going to happen.
But it gets back to the minimalism versus extreme technical ability.
And keeping in mind, like we talked about story, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's the story you're wanting to tell?
Yeah.
What's the easiest way to tell that story that is the most communicative to the audience? Like, that is sort of the triangle for success in video.
And then on top of that, there's, how much time do you have
Sure.
to make it?
For sure. I mean, a classic example of I shot a video all day Tuesday, and I knew that I was flying on Wednesday. I know that I had meetings on Thursday. So this all day shoot needs to be released 2 days later. So my game plan was not to over capture. So I shot in the morning and I held the camera on one object. And then I came back when the sun went down and filmed that same object, knowing that I could use a drop in the beat in the music to go from daylight to sunlight. So I already cut out the whole middle of the day. That doesn't affect the story at all. And I never filmed myself in front of the camera, because if I was talking in front of the camera, I got to edit all that through. And then I'm locked into whatever story I told that day. I'm like, I'm filming all B-roll. I'll put it all under music, and then I'll write a story afterwards and do it in voiceover. And that was because that was the time frame I had, right?
Yeah.
So you always have to kind of figure out, this is the project. What's the time allowance that I have for that project? Because it's just not realistic that you always get endless hours to do things. And we all know video content can take endless hours to do
You
things.
just keep going.
How many times have you put in a solid 2 hours and you're like, so I have a very good first minute in my video?
Never.
All right. So when we get together at Into the Woods, ideally the idea is that people that know about video and animation can come and learn how to get better or to get a different perspective on things. But I think the person that it's most advantageous to is someone who's already doing illustration, already doing design, but looking to grow their social media, grow their services that they can offer their clients, and just grow as a creative, just another way to tell the story. Am I correct? And that's what we're going to be throwing down.
That's what we're going to be doing, and just highlighting that the story is like the most important part.
Yep.
That's the foundation of everything you're doing.
Yep.
And a lot of it really is kind of in the scripting and pre-production and planning of what you're doing, whether it's a film or social media or an animation. We're not, boxed into just doing like social media stuff or anything, but it's just working on, the fundamentals of storytelling and why we do what we do.
Convenient thing is this: if you're breathing today, you are writing a story.
Exactly.
Everyone's life, everyone's career is a story. It's just up to you to figure out how to capture and share that story. And with consistency of sharing that story, you definitely can build a community of people that are like you, that care about you, and you can make that story bigger and bigger as you get more and more people that go along the way with you. But it does start with learning how to use these tools and how to get that storytelling perspective down. All right, guys. Thank you so much for our talk today. Looking forward to seeing what you have to share with everybody at Into the Woods. Can't wait to hang out with you guys then.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
But really, I can't wait to hang out with you in the hot tub.
Oh, we'll get in there.
That didn't really sound like an invite, did it, Jake?
I don't know. I'll be on my motorcycle.
I mean,
you guys have fun.
We can use the Skamania hot tub, but yeah.
The personal hot tub just not on the invite list.
It's,
all right,
it's personal. It's
all right,
personal.
well, I look forward to becoming hot tub buds.
Yeah.
I'll work my way there. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
See you guys soon.
Later.
I like that the drill just started right.
Yeah.